Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 2020 meeting of the Squirrel Hill Historical Society. For those of you that are new, our monthly meetings will continue to be on Zoom until it's safe to return to our traditional live meetings. The schedule remains the same, second Tuesday of every month, starting at 7:30. Sometimes we open the gate at 7 o'clock. Unless there's a conflict with the holiday, in which case we'll schedule another day. We're in the process of putting together a series of programs and activities for the coming year. Todd Miller, who's a public relations and communications consultant, has just joined our team as co-host of the program committee. Todd, along with Toby Chapman, will be responsible for identifying and coordinating new programs during the upcoming year. We should mention that we continue to actively search for future speakers. One condition is they need to be able to use Zoom. If you're interested or know somebody who is, please go to our webpage and click the Contact Us link, and someone will be in touch. That being said, I'm going to pass it on to Helen, who's going to discuss a couple of things that are going on in the area. Helen?
Okay, just 3 short announcements. Whoops, oh, that's weird. Let me try that again, sorry. Share screen.
Yep, there we go.
Okay, here we go.
There you go.
Okay,
Right.
all right, great. I'm learning new things every time. Okay, so just 3 short announcements. Next month's presentation, an interview with Jan Kavrak about the Squirrel Hill Cafe. This book is just coming out as we speak by Jan Kavrak and Leslie Ann McElroy. They don't have access to Zoom, so we're going to go and tape an interview with them at the Squirrel Hill Cafe and show it on December 8th. And then we're going to ask all of you and anybody else who joins us to talk about the Squirrel Hill Cafe and some other memories of the business district of Squirrel Hill. So that's December 8th. And the new interactive driving tour of Squirrel Hill is now on the website, and it is an expanded and wonderful tour thanks to Lauren Winkler, who is at the meeting tonight. She is a specialist in mapping. So if you haven't gone to the website and clicked on this map, please do so, and then drive this 55 historic stops on a 10-mile journey through Squirrel Hill. So this is on our website. You just go to the website and click on Driving Tour of Squirrel Hill. Finally, the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition and Squirrel Hill Historical Society 2021 calendar, it's now on sale. So you can purchase this at some businesses in Squirrel Hill. I think Classic Lines, Amazing Books, 10,000 Villages, and also you can order it through the Squirrel Hill Historical Society website. If you do that, you click on the calendar link, but that'll take you to the Squirrel Hill Urban Coalition link because we just wanted one place to order. And the information about ordering is if you click on Support Shuck and then Products. So those are my 3 announcements. And back to you, Wayne.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. That leads us to tonight's program, the title of which is Exploring Pittsburgh's Lost Treasures. It's presented by Rossilynne Culgan. She's the author of the book, 100 Things to Do in Pittsburgh Before You Die. And she describes herself as a storyteller, journalist, writer, photographer, editor, strategic communicator, and social media evangelist. And with that being said, I'd like to pass the torch to Rosalind to begin her presentation.
Thank you, Wayne. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad to be here with all of you virtually. I wish we could be in person, but maybe someday soon. In the meantime, it's nice to see all of your smiling faces in the little squares on my computer screen. So let's dive in here. Let me share my screen.
Oh, excuse me for 1 minute about muting.
Yes, so we will keep everyone muted during the presentation. So the first 30 minutes of the presentation will be me going through some slides, and then the next 30 minutes we'll open it up for questions and some sharing of memories. So we can dive in. Thank you for the reminder, Helen. And I actually am thinking that once I share my screen, I may not have the power to see everybody. So Helen and Wayne, I may need to rely on your help just in case.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, I hope my screen is sharing now.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
All
Yes,
right.
it is.
Good. Okay, we can get started. So again, thank you all so much for inviting me to join your group tonight. I really appreciate it. This is how let's see if it will let me, whoops. This is how I feel about talking to all of you. If you, like me, see pictures from the pre-COVID times and it makes you feel very nervous about everyone being so close together without masks on, I hear you. But I am thrilled to be with you so much that I would be waving a terrible towel if I could. So glad to be talking with you all tonight. Let me tell you a little bit about me. So this is me here on the left in the library. This is the Carnegie Library in Oakland, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I love reading and writing, and I also love photography. And one of my favorite subjects to photograph are what we call ghost signs, these advertising signs that are on buildings around town and are now ghosted, not quite so vibrant as they once were, but I still love them, and I love to hunt for ghost signs, as it were. These are some of the ones I've found around town recently. So I write at home a lot. This is my writing assistant. Her name is Cleopatra. She can tend to be either very helpful in trying to remind me to take breaks or very distracting when I'm trying to package books to ship out. But that is my writing assistant, as you can see. And about that book, so I am the author of the book, 100 Things to Do in Pittsburgh Before You Die. It's a Pittsburgh bucket list. Normally I talk about this book at my presentations. However, given the climate with COVID-19, it is difficult to think about getting out and exploring in our cities. So tonight we are instead going to talk about history, which is the subject of my next book. So we'll dive into that in a moment, but I'll briefly tell you about 100 things because we're not going to be in a pandemic forever, as I have to remind myself sometimes. This is a bucket list, as I mentioned. It's great if you've got out-of-towners coming in and you're just trying to think of something to do. I've put together agendas for different folks, depending on their interests. And there's also a lot of hidden gems in the book that even lifelong Pittsburghers, like my parents, who've always lived here, had never heard of. So that was a delight. And maybe I might provide some new ideas of things for you all to do too. If you're interested in learning more, you can check it out at my website. That's 100thingspittsburgh.com. And it makes a great gift if you're thinking about early holiday shopping. I like to put a Post-it note on pages that I'm interested in doing those things with that person, and then say something like, hey, in 2021, let's do these 5 things together. So that is my sales pitch for the night. And now we're going to move on. Let me tell you about my day job. So my day job is also writing, and I write for a local news website called The Incline. And when I can, I like to write about history. So this is an example of a story that I did about the Altar Bar, which started out as a church in the Strip District and then became a club and a music venue. And interestingly, is now a church again, which I find completely fascinating. So I try to write about history as much as I can. And also at The Incline, we make a morning newsletter that comes to your inbox. It's free every morning. It's sort of the 2020 version of a daily newspaper. So it's everything you need to know about Pittsburgh in 5 minutes or less. If you're interested in signing up, it's theincline.com. And you'll also find these fun illustrations from us. So things like Pittsburgh neighborhoods as donuts, things like the scents of Pittsburgh. My favorite is Kennywood, which we said smells like potato patch fries, funnel cake, and nostalgia, which I think I would like to have that bottled for a perfume. And illustrations like the unspoken rules of Pittsburgh, which include things like thanking the bus driver before you get off the bus, avoiding Hunt's ketchup at all costs, and of course, if the arts festival is happening, it is raining outside. So that's a bit about us. We are all about helping curious locals navigate Pittsburgh, this place we call home. And that is a mission for me, both in my day job as well as in my second job, writing. So let's go on an adventure back in time. The book I'm working on right now is called Lost Treasures of Pittsburgh, and it's all about places in Pittsburgh that no longer exist. So I'm going to walk you through 4 of those briefly that I'm working on researching, and then I want to hear from you what I've missed and what places you would add. So let's start off with a classic. Now, I can see some of you in little squares here. So by show of hands, how many of you have been to an Isley's, any Isley's at some point in your life? I'm going to guess that's just about everybody. Yes. So of course, Isley's is a Pittsburgh tradition. And this picture here is from 1964. This is a view of Wood Street, and you really can see not just Isley's here in the center, but you can get a flavor for the other businesses that were downtown at that time. Solman's Menswear, for example, here on the left. And Isley's, of course, was so popular that there was another location downtown, and this one is located on Penn Avenue, and there's this huge crowd, which is, again, really unnerving to see big crowds, even though it was decades ago. This picture is from about the 1950s. There's not a specific date on this image. And you have this large crowd gathered between Rosenbaum's department store and Isley's. So there must have been a sale or something going on that day because there's quite a crowd. So we've also got Isley's in Lawrenceville and the South Side, and I particularly love this Lawrenceville photo on the left. You can just see that this is definitely Butler Street and how it's evolved over the years. And then on the right, of course, we have the South Side and Carson. I really enjoy the old cars in that picture on the right-hand side. I wish I could cruise around in one of those. And since we are talking about Squirrel Hill tonight, these are 2 Isleys from Squirrel Hill that perhaps you may recognize. On the left, we have this one, which really the archive photo is not actually about Isley's, which I thought was funny. The archive photo is about the construction they're doing on the street, and Isley's just happened to be in the background, but of course it worked for my purposes here. But this is a Department of Public Works project, and in the background you can see this is at Hobart and Murray, and we're looking west towards this Isley store. And then on the right-hand side, this was one of my favorite pictures I have found so far because it's so easy to place this in my mind. Even though I was not alive in 1969, I can get a sense for exactly where this Isley's is because you have the Squirrel Hill newsstand and then you have the Squirrel Hill Cafe on the far right, and that sign, as we just talked about earlier, I don't think that sign has changed a bit. So you get this delightful piece of history where you really can place exactly where the Isley's was, even if, like me, you had never been there. So I'm going to move on now to actually, I want to move on to some things that you might not know about Isley. So I'm sure everybody knows about the skyscraper cones, the Klondike bars, and the chipped ham. You've probably had all of those things. But some neat facts about Isley's that I've learned so far are that it all started in 1833 with this Swiss cheesemaker, and his name was Christian Isley, and he immigrated to Ohio. And with him, he brought his most prized possession, which was not, silk or money or anything, pieces of furniture, anything like that. It was a copper cheese kettle. So he passed along this family trade for generations. And Isley's was born right around the turn of the century, and it rapidly expanded into Pittsburgh after 1931, not just Ohio. Now, For item number 2, I want to take us a bit more off the beaten path, and I'm going to ask again for a show of hands. I will be fascinated to learn if any of you ever ate at Raywell's. Okay, I see one hand. Raywell's. This was downtown. There were multiple Raywell's, but I'm specifically researching the one that was in the Skinny building. Okay, I saw a few hands, so this will be a new one for most of you, which is great. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. So back to the right photo here. So Raywell's restaurant was located in the Skinny building. This, on the left-hand side of the photo, is the Skinny building. It's only 5 feet 2 inches wide, so it has a very apt name. And Raywell's was located in the ground floor. So it was a burger joint and kind of your classic greasy spoon. And Raywell's was really, you could smell it before you could see it, which I spoke to the owner's daughter, who also worked there and owned it at one point, and she said she doesn't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. And the jeweler who was on the corner probably was not too thrilled about smelling burgers in their fancy jewelry store, but nevertheless, that was Raywell's. And some interesting facts about it. So Raywell's operated from 1938 until 1979. It was just off Market Square, as you see. And it was operated by a man named Ray Roman, and with help from his attorney, who was named Mr. Wells. So of course you can see the name here. On the menu, it was really simple. Burgers, hot dogs, hot sausages, donuts, pies. They always had egg custard. It was known for its salty burger seasoning, which was the family's secret recipe, and I couldn't get his daughter to divulge it even to this day. The restaurant, as I told you, is just 5 foot 2 inches wide, and there were only 18 inches between the counter and the wall. So if you've been there, you might remember this, but if not, essentially how it worked is the outside glass, each seat in the restaurant, each stool had its own little door. So you would open the door and then sit yourself on the stool and slide in and pull the door behind you and hope it didn't hit you in the back. And you would be tucked in pretty tight next to your neighbors. You place your order and you could see the grill. So, nowadays it's very popular that restaurants, you can see them working in the kitchen, but this was not popular back then. So it was pretty unique. According to Gloria Androsi, which is Ray's daughter, you would place your order, and then if you were down at the end, the waitresses would have to pass your plate down because they couldn't get past it. It was so tight. Basically, it was a counter service. You'd sit there and place your order. You could watch the grill. You could kind of watch what was going on, but very, very tiny spot. It was a classic greasy spoon. Now, Ray has an interesting story himself. He has passed away now, but when he first came to Pittsburgh, he actually came from New York, and he had immigrated there from Puerto Rico. So he's in New York, he's working as a cook, and some folks from Pittsburgh, some investors, noticed that he was talented. So they said, why don't you come to Pittsburgh and create this restaurant? And he said, okay, there aren't that many opportunities in New York for me to have my own restaurant, so let's give it a go. So he comes to Pittsburgh. This is in just before 1938, and he gets off the train and his watch says 12, and he thinks to himself, I must have messed up. It's pitch black out here. It must be 12 midnight. And he soon realized that it was actually 12 noon, but in 1938, it was so dark in Pittsburgh at that time, which he had never experienced, that he thought it was midnight, when in fact it was the middle of the day. So Ray continued to learn lessons about Pittsburgh. He initially wanted to have his restaurant be a tropical theme. So he got these faux palm trees and decorated them, put them all around the outside of his restaurant. And within a few days, the faux palm trees were no longer green, they were black. So he had to very quickly switch from this tropical theme restaurant to what became Raywell's. And he ended up going with stainless steel counter and just glass walls, because those were much easier to keep clean than your silk palm trees. I asked Gloria if Ray was disappointed that his first restaurant was going to be just this tiny little place. Was that disappointing to him? He was only getting 5 feet 2 inches of space. And she said he was just so elated to have his own space that he didn't really mind at all. And he ended up over the years creating several restaurants in downtown Pittsburgh. So from a very small beginning, he created a big footprint downtown. Now, after Raywell's closed in 1979, the Skinny building has gone through a lot of changes. And some of those are, for a while, it became this art gallery, which was too skinny to go inside. So you look at it from outside. That was their big pitch. You'd come downtown and stand there on the corner and see what kind of gallery items they had. And nowadays, it looks something like this. This is a photograph that I took just last year. You can see it's been renovated a bit. It's all freshened up. It looks pretty good, but there's nothing inside the second or third floors. The first floor is used for sort of souvenir shops and partially by 7-Eleven. And it's not really known what the fate of the building will be next, but Raywell's was certainly a big part of its history. And for anybody who has been to Raywell's, I definitely want to hear your memories after we wrap up here. So we've had 2 food locations. Now let's move on to commerce. Now I know you're all muted, so you can't tell me if you recognize this place, but take a moment to give it a good look and see if you might recognize it. I see a few head nods. This is Allegheny Center Mall over on the north side. And you can see that there are lots of folks. It's a bustling mall. Malls these days just don't look like that, even obviously when it's not COVID times. They're not so packed anymore, as we all know. But at this time, and this photo was a very popular spot for shopping. We've got a Sears in the background, which again is sort of another relic nowadays. And today, Allegheny Center Mall is an office. I used to work here. I used to have an office here. So for me, this is what it has always looked like. You can see in this photograph similarities to the previous photo I showed when it was still a mall. That is, of course, this mezzanine area, this balcony, and it has lights which haven't changed much. If we reflect back here, we can still see that mezzanine area with the lighting that's only changed a bit over the years, but it sure looks different nowadays. And then if we look back to inside the stores, I absolutely adore this photo, particularly the bags that they're choosing with the gloves and the hairstyle. Just pure fashion right here. And these are 2 women who were in the Sears store at Allegheny Center Mall. And nowadays, inside those stores looks something like this, really open office, very modern looking, clearly. No real sign of it being stores at one point. So for folks who have shopped there, I definitely want to hear about the types of stores that you like to frequent there and what memories you have about Allegheny Center Mall. But before we do that, I have got one more place to share, and this is another classic that I'm going to bet probably almost all of you have been to before. So again, by show of hands, if you'll indulge me, how many of you have been to the Syria Mosque? Lots of hands. Yeah. I unfortunately never have, but I wish I could have been, because hearing my family members reflect on the Syria Mosque sounded like it was a very special place. I've been to the new Syria Mosque, I suppose, in O'Hara Township, but it sounds like it's nothing compared to what the Syria Mosque once was in its heyday. So you probably know a lot of this, but I'm going to share with you what I have learned in my research so far. This picture here is from 1991, which is right before it was demolished. So this is one of the more recent photographs of the Syria Mosque. But over the years, it operated from starting back in 1916 until 91. The list of acts that I found who have performed at the Syria Mosque was absolutely mind-boggling. You have all of the greats, really. Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, the Bangles, Genesis, the band, James Taylor, Miles Davis, Buddy Holly, Bob Dylan, The Who, Bruce Springsteen, Bob Marley, James Brown, the Ramones, R.E.M., Bon Jovi, pretty much any genre of music that you like. Probably one of the greats performed at the Syria Mosque. It also was home to the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra, the opera, the National Negro Opera Company over the years. And in addition to all of that, it had many comedy acts and also many political speakers as well. So it was just this place where it really was the heart, from what I have learned so far, of Oakland. And sadly, it was not able to be saved. Here are some views of the Syria Mosque. So this one on the left is a view looking from the lawn of soldiers and sailors, if you can kind of think of orienting yourself that way, showing the exterior of the Syria Mosque. This is from about 1920, according to Historic Pittsburgh, and it was designed by Huell, Schmidt, and Holmes. It was around for many, many decades, as you all know. And then on the right, we have this photo. Again, this must have been for a pretty big performance, because there's a really big crowd that looks like they're pouring into the Syrian Mosque. This photo is from 1948, and this is the side that was on Bigelow and Lytton Avenue. And sadly, it could not be preserved after a long and intense battle, and it was demolished in 91. And as far as I know, it is still a parking lot to this day. So I definitely want to hear memories of all of you who were there before it was turned into a parking lot. Before we jump in to your questions and sharing your memories, if folks are on Facebook or Instagram, you can stay connected with me there. Here is how to do that. And then I also would love to include your memories and your photos in the book. So please feel free to share those. My email address is losttreasurespgh@gmail.com. So if you've got some time, at least we all have some extra time on our hands right now. I try to tell myself that's one benefit of this strange year we're living in. So if you've got some time to dig through any of your scrapbooks or photos, I would love to see your Pittsburgh memories and include them as well. So I'm going to stop sharing here so that I can see all of your faces better. One moment here. Let's start with some of the most obscure place. I think there was a few hands that went up when I asked if anyone had been to Raywell's. So does anyone perhaps have a Raywell's memory to share? And we can unmute you if you just kind of give us a wave. Audrey, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but did you have one by chance?
You could, well, so I was too short. You could get food to walk away. And my grandfather took me there, but I was too short to see what was going on. I was little I'm still probably too little to see, but I have no idea what was going on. The food was good. I always had a hot dog.
That's a great memory. Do you remember, so how old were you back then? Do you remember?
Oh, probably 9 or 10.
Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
It was either go there or go to Donahoe's.
Very neat. That's a great memory. Was it a spot your grandfather liked to frequent?
Probably not, but I liked it. I liked
Yeah.
the hot dogs. If we went to Donahoe's, though, you could have birch beer. So that was upstairs from Murphy's.
Okay, I love it. Well, I'm going to take notes if that's okay, but I won't quote any of you in the book unless I reach out to you for permission. So don't worry. Please feel free to share openly. That's a delightful memory. Thank you for sharing that. I think Audrey may have been the only one who raised a hand about Raywell's, but if anyone else has Raywell's memories, give me a shout or a wave. Okay, that one was off the beaten path a little bit. So thanks for indulging me in that one. Let's go to one where more people can participate. I would love to hear your Isley's memories. I have heard that there was a little secret that you'd get a prize if you had a Klondike with a pink center. And sometimes the employees, if they were male employees, would sort of scratch off the chocolate and give the Klondikes with the pink centers to pretty girls. So I'm not sure if anyone else has heard that story, but I'd love to hear your Isley's memories, whether they're about Klondikes or anything else, if you've got them.
We used to go to the main one on, what was the main one by
It was at the Boulevard of the Allies.
Boulevard of the Allies, the huge one.
Yeah,
And,
I went there a lot.
Yeah. I was on the swim team and we'd always go to Isley's afterwards. And with the Klondikes, it was like if you had 6 people, one person was going to get the pink thing and it got you an extra Klondike. So if you opened them there, you were hoping that you could get another Klondike for somebody in the team.
Yeah, it was Bedlam on Sundays.
But I personally loved the skyscraper cones.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And the chip chop barbecue.
Yeah. So tell me about the skyscraper cones. Could you get those in any flavor, or was this kind of the basic chocolate vanilla thing, or you could
You
choose?
can get any flavor.
Oh, okay.
It was the scoop. It was a metal scoop in the shape of the skyscraper, so it could go into any flavor.
Shopping center as well, which is where I grew up.
Rosalind, the Isleys in Squirrel Hill, which predates me, the one on Forbes, interestingly, that was a theater, the first theater in Squirrel Hill, maybe, the Orpheum, which was the beginning of Beth Shalom Synagogue, because they met first in the upstairs room. So that building with the arch was the entrance. So it's got quite a history besides just Isley's. And I just wanted to mention that if you walk down Forbes a little, there is a ghost sign, Bartlett's Furs. I don't know if you've seen that one. You've got that one?
I have photographed that one. I love that one. Yes, that's a great one.
Did you photograph the Clark's one in the Hill District?
No, a friend shared that with me though, and that has been on my list. I've been meaning to get out there because that one is absolutely gorgeous.
Let me see if I have it on my phone and I'll show it. Hang on.
Okay, yeah.
And could I ask you what you feel about, like, I know that Braddock a few years ago went through a repainting of these ghost signs. So when you ride through Braddock, you see a lot of these walls of buildings having been repainted. What's your feeling about that? Do you like it or not like it?
Oh, Julia, I'll tell you in 1 second. Julia's, if you look at her screen, she's showing the Clark sign and you can see it's really, really cool.
Wow.
Helen, I have mixed opinions on that. When I used to work as a newspaper reporter in Tarentum, and they also got a grant in Tarentum to redo a bunch of their ghost signs. And, you know, I'm torn. I'm of two minds. I think it's wonderful that they're being preserved because some of them would just completely fade away and you wouldn't be able to see them anymore. But they certainly aren't ghosts anymore. The ones in Braddock, I think there's a Tom Tucker ginger ale one there that I photographed. And then there are so many in Tarentum that are bright and vibrant again. So I suppose I'm just happy that someone's paying attention to them and not just building over them. So I think I'm probably, 60-40, but more in favor of preserving them rather than having them get covered over. And in Polish Hill, there was a really famous, you may have seen a few years ago, there was a building that I think had burned down or got demolished, and it unveiled this gorgeous Mother's Bread Go sign. And now I walked up there the other day. I live in the Strip District, so I walked up the hill to Polish Hill on one of these nice days, and it is covered over again. They've built a new home next to it. So that sort of broke my heart a little. So I suppose I'm just happy that people are paying attention to ghost signs. But yeah, Julia, thanks for sharing that. I've got to get out there someday and check out that one in person. Okay, we've talked about Isley's. We heard a little bit about Raywell's. How many of you shopped at Allegheny Center Mall? And do you remember anything special about shopping there? Audrey, you've got one. Go for it.
I have to tell you that the people of the North Side do not like the Allegheny Center Mall. That's a horrible, sinful thing. You have to talk about the Market House that disappeared
Okay.
in, I think, 59, but I'm not sure, where you could go inside and shop at different places that set up like ad hoc displays to sell. And that was the best way to shop. They tore that down. They really decimated the North Side by building the mall. And North Siders will take you all the way back to 1907 when the city subsumed Allegheny City. And they'll just don't mention it to them.
Yes, that is good to know. Yes, Allegheny Center Mall definitely has a difficult history. And I know when Nova Place came in and reopened as an office, that was a big part of their communications. Like, we're trying to right these wrongs, we're trying to knit this back together. And they certainly are doing the best that I think that they can. But yes, that is a really good note. Thank you for mentioning that. And
You can rent the space in the big hallway space now to do an event, which is fun.
Yeah,
Not
it's
now because of COVID.
Right. Yes, they have made it into a beautiful space. But yeah, that's a great point. And that's definitely something I will tread cautiously around. I appreciate that note. What else about Allegheny Center Mall do you all remember? Good or bad? Susan, did I see that you may have been raising a hand? I wasn't sure.
My eldest son, who is now 44, I used to take him to Allegheny Center Mall. I remember Sears at one end and the other end was Zayre, which was a discount kind of department store. And he always liked to get ice cream at Sweet William, which was a little shop, I guess it was kind of like Isley's. I think it had deli stuff as well as sweet stuff. And that was, he would say, "Can we go to Sweet Willem?" And that was his treat for putting up with the shopping that we did at Allegheny Center Mall.
Well, I have to ask, so there was the two big department stores at the end, and then was it all just smaller stores along the interior?
Yeah, just like malls used to be. Like,
yeah, back in okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Helen, please.
You dredged up this memory. I'd completely forgotten that in college during the summer one year, I had a job at Woolworth's there, and it was in the evenings. And I just remember going back to the parking lot with my friend who had a Corvair, and the car had been stolen. That's my memories of Allegheny Center.
Oh my gosh, was it a convertible Corvair?
No.
No, okay. I thought maybe that's how they got in. Wow.
But there was a Woolworths. Or was it a Murphy's? It was a 5 and 10.
It's one of those, yeah.
Mm-hmm. My goodness. Any other folks have Allegheny Center Mall memories? Oh, I think I see Toby. I think that was a hand raised. Toby, you're on mute if you don't mind unmuting yourself.
See if I can unmute him.
Okay.
Okay. Did that work? Toby, are you there?
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Oh, there you go.
From what I remember, never going shopping at the mall there, but what I do remember is going to the public theater there and you would drive in, you would park there. They had the parking garage, and it was very easy to get in. You left your car, you knew where it was. But during the evening, they somehow lowered some barriers that you couldn't get to your car. You had to walk all the outside and around and back inside. Curse them.
Well, I don't know if you've been over there recently, but I feel like the parking situation at Nova Place is almost as disastrous.
Well, one time we
Yeah.
saw our car on the other
Yeah,
side of the gate.
yeah, we saw our car at the other side of the gate. I do have a story to tell about the Syria Mosque when you get there.
Okay, well, let's do it. Let's jump into that now. Please, go ahead.
Okay. Well, first, as far as the venue, we saw the Symphony there, and that was okay. We also went to see Ravi Shankar, and we sat on the side, and we simply couldn't hear a thing. It was just, you saw him strumming, but you couldn't hear anything. But my story has to go with the destruction of the Syria Mosque. And I was on the Faculty of Arts and Sciences Committee at the time. And when I heard that the medical school had, UPMC, had purchased the Syria Mosque, I was livid because they were always telling us how we couldn't expand because we're locked in by Oakland. And then all of a sudden, the medical school comes and grabs this piece of property right in the lower campus. I was livid about that. So I was able to ask around and question, how did this happen? And it turned out, you could kind of glean things a little bit here and there from the newspaper articles. The Shriners were willing to sell it to the university for $7 million. And at the last minute, the medical area jumped in and paid them $10 million. Well, we couldn't, compete with them. But at the next Faculty of Arts and Sciences Council meeting, I brought this up, and I said, this is what I gathered from the papers, although it was from secret sources. And it seems to me something is strange here. I thought that the medical school and the university are on the same team. What's the idea of this kind of competition and outbidding us? And Pasvar, who was the president of the time, leans over to Thomas Detry with an open mic and says, "How much of this is public?" My jaw dropped open. So at the next meeting, a month later, neither Detry nor Pasvar came, but Detry's right-hand man, who's the head of UPMC, all of a sudden, Jeff Romoff was there. And I have to say, he was really smooth, Oh, it didn't happen like that at all. Well, it was BS because we already had a public admission. But anyhow, that's my story of the Syria Mosque.
I have a Syria Mosque story.
Oh, yes, thank you very much, Toby. That is
I have a Syria
very
Mosque story.
sad they couldn't save it. And I am seeing
I'm Jean.
Jean, yes, please, go ahead.
Jean. Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
I was away from Pittsburgh about almost 40 years, but as a teenager and very early, I used to usher at the Syria Mosque, and I sang in the Mendelssohn Choir, and William Steinberg was the director of the Symphony, and those were the marvelous memories. And I felt so badly when I came back to Pittsburgh around 90, 91 about the demolition. And then just another quick word on the Isleys. When I came back to Pittsburgh, I had been to Isleys all the time as a young person when I was in school in Oakland. And my husband was in medical school then. We always went to Isleys. But when I came back to Pittsburgh and I did research and work at McGee, that was where my office was with my staff, right in the ice cream parlor at Isleys in 91, 92.
That sounds like a good place to have your team. Well, Jean, I would love to hear from you and maybe other folks too, as someone who never had the opportunity to go to the Syria Mosque. What about it made it so
I was
special?
there all the time. I went to all the operas, all the symphonies, but like I said, we ushered and then we listened to all the symphonies and the operas when I was a kid. And like I say, and then we sang there for many years at the Mendelssohn, with the Mendelssohn Choir.
Tell me
Russell
what
Wickman was the director at the time from Chatham.
Okay. I'd love to hear about what it looked like inside. Could you maybe describe what you remember,
I can't
colors,
remember.
design?
Just can't remember.
Okay, or anybody else who wants to jump in.
Red velvet seat. I remember.
And colorful interior painting, pale tones of many colors. The interior was huge. It was expansive, and the balcony sides were long. And it was just big.
Okay, great.
Even in grade school, we used to go there for the symphony. That was probably the first experience. And my last experience was a friend of mine took me for my birthday to see Yul Brynner and the King and I. Was the last time I was there.
My last time was a Lou Reed concert.
And I saw the Who, but they were so loud, I had to stick cotton in my ears to be able to hear them. The whole stage was lined with amplifiers. And on the other hand, an opposite story was I had a college boyfriend with, the hippie kind of people, long hair and stuff. And when you went to the symphony, at intermission, you could go down and take seats in the front. So we would buy cheap seats, and then at intermission, we'd sit in the front row and get dirty looks from one of the symphony violinists in particular, because what were those bums doing there? But we loved classical music, so my two stories.
That's a great story. I love it.
I think one of my I saw Gordon Lightfoot there and a bunch of other people, and a friend of mine was at the Bruce Springsteen one. She said it was amazing. But isn't the Syria Mosque famous for basically killing Eleanor Aduza? She never wanted to come to Pittsburgh. She thought it was hell on earth. And she was to play in this play called La Porta Chiusa, which means the closed door. And it was a rainy day, and the door was locked and closed. And when she finally got in, she had got a cold, and she died in the Shenley Hotel, which is now part of Pitt. And they used to keep that room pristine so you could visit where she died. And I tried to see it. Of course, it's COVID time, so you can't get in anywhere anymore. But that was what a claim to fame, to kill one of the greatest of the actresses of all time, apparently.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I will have to look into that more. Yeah, what a claim to fame. Not a good one. Well,
But are there no pictures of the interior? Does anybody know?
I have found some. The ones I've found so far are black and white, so they weren't the most beautiful quality, but I'm going to keep researching because I do want to be able to find some color photos, especially hearing from all of you with this red velvet and the paintings. So I'm going to keep digging. But again, if any of you find in your own personal archives photos from concerts or performances, I'd love to check them out. Well, I want to respect everyone's time. I know we have just about 10 minutes left. So if I may, if you'll indulge me, I'd love to get everyone involved and maybe go around the room. I will call on you if that's okay. And if you are willing to share some place that you think is a lost treasure of Pittsburgh, it can be something that we've already talked about. It can be something that everybody knows, like Isley's. It can be something more off the beaten path, like Raywell's. But I would love to hear what your personal lost treasure is so that I can make sure I include it. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to think, and then I'll randomly call on folks. And if you don't want to participate, no pressure. But okay, Audrey, you're in my first view. So do you have one you'd like to share?
Well, besides all of Squirrel Hill, which we all know very well, there are restaurants that are still going that have been there. One's like the Elbow Room closed within the past 10 years, but the Pleasure Bar is still open that my mother went to when she was single. And there are Big Jim's in the Run. There are so many restaurants that have been there for generations.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've been going to Big Jim's and getting a calzone has been on my to-do list, my own personal bucket list. So that's
gnocchi.
something
You have to get gnocchi.
Oh, is that okay?
Big plate.
Okay. I'll
If
do it.
you want a calzone, call before you go if you're going to eat there. It takes an hour for them to prepare it.
I've heard the advice, and you should bring multiple people to share it with because it looks like quite a big plate.
Well, all those portions are huge. They're like 4 meals.
Oh my goodness.
Big Jim himself
One,
was
one
here.
when you get it, save one for the next day and put 2 in the freezer.
Right. That sounds like a plan. Well, Helen,
Rosalind, if you don't mind me interrupting, I just like
Please.
to introduce Lauren Winkler, whose picture just appeared. Would you just wave, Lauren? She's the one who did the interactive driving tour, and it'll help you explore all these hidden treasures of Squirrel Hill. So I'm sorry for the interruption, but I didn't want to pass this opportunity up to introduce Lauren.
no, that's fantastic. Hi, Lauren. I can't wait to check out your driving tour. That sounds
And
fantastic.
if you want to do a tour of lost treasures for your book, let me know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I will jot down your name.
Lauren, how do we access it?
If you go to the Squirrel Hill Historical Society's website, there's a link for driving tour.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great, Lauren. Yeah, I've been thinking about, doing sort of tours for lost treasures. I know some of the places still exist, of course, like, for example, the Allegheny Center Mall and Raywell's, the buildings still exist, even though the original place I'm talking about doesn't. And other places are completely gone, but I still think that folks would be interested in going to those places and kind of, bringing up those memories. So I definitely will reach out.
So I have 2. One is
please.
Hill and one is not, and maybe my father will have some. I don't know. He's shy. So the one that's in Squirrel Hill are the ice ponds. So I've been researching the oldest businesses of Squirrel Hill, and what I learned is that they by Alderdice, where the field is now, also Whiteman Park, and the area by Wilkins and Beechwood. Those were all ice ponds. And the Wilkins and Beechwood one was the oldest and the biggest. It's called John Bruce Ice Pond. And the one building that's at the corner that just looks a little bit out of place, that was a grocery store that was where the ice pond used to be. That was their ice pond office. So that's the Squirrel Hill one. And then the other one that I think is close enough to count is Lower Homestead, which I never knew existed. Living in Squirrel Hill my whole life, driving over the Homestead High Level Bridge, over the steel mills, and then nothing. I learned maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that there was a whole community there that went down to First Avenue. So you see 8th Avenue was the main street in Homestead. It used to go all the way to First Avenue, and there was a whole community there of 1,500 houses that were torn down in the 40s. So I've been researching them as well.
Very
They all
neat.
worked in the mills.
Yeah, they demolished it all to expand the mill, and then
Wow.
everything at the waterfront, it used to be a whole neighborhood.
Huh.
And
Oh, that's
before
really
that, it started out as the city poor farm.
Wow.
We're researching that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thanks for passing that one along. Well, Helen, you are next on my screen. Do you have a lost treasure you might like to share with the group?
Well, Tony had his hand up, so can I?
Oh, yes, please.
I just want to say, I think we all miss all the original kosher delicatessens in Squirrel Hill. I mean, there was a day when you had your choice of half a dozen authentic kosher corned beef sandwiches, and they don't exist anymore. And I grew up in Old Shadyside, and there was the gazebo, but not even that could hold a candle to a lot of the places in Squirrel Hill, I remember. So,
Tony, is there a particular one that stands out to you as, iconic or really special?
well, again, in my formative years, it was Shadyside and Walnut Street, and that was the gazebo, but it wasn't. But still, you could go up and down Murray Avenue, and I can't give you the names. I'm sure people here each had a favorite, but there were 4, 5, 6, 7 on Murray Avenue. No, we have the Smallman Grill, but that's kind of not a throwback. Okay, it's not one of the originals. So
Weinstein's was the original.
Weinstein's, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'm seeing these
Adler's
coming in the chat.
Delicatessen, it was my cousin's.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
Very neat.
If I could just jump in along with the delicatessens, across from McGee Hospital on the Boulevard of the Allies,
Yes,
there
indeed.
was a fabulous delicatessen called the S&B, which stood for Sam and Benny's.
Yes.
And they made their own corned beef and their own pastrami that was truly to die for. I have never before or since ever had corned beef and pastrami like what came from the S&B. It was amazing, with the red plastic seats on the
Around.
yes, exactly. It was a very interesting place, but nobody could beat their cold cuts. Nobody.
That sounds delicious. Shirley, you remember that one as well, yeah?
Yes, and when I had my first child, my father-in-law wanted to know what I wanted, and I said, I want a corned beef sandwich from the S&B. He went down, he brought me back a sandwich. All I can tell you is I was nursing that child, and when they brought him down the hall, all he did was hiccup. I remember like it was yesterday. But man, were those sandwiches delish. Oh, yeah.
That sounds like much deserved after having a child, that you
I
should
deserved
get your
it.
corned beef.
I deserved it, yes.
Absolutely. Toby, did I see a hand raised there as well?
If I could jump in on
Please.
there, it was a takeout place, but Katz's Delicatessen had the best lox, hand sliced. It was wonderful.
Yeah, yeah.
Where was that located, Toby?
It was on Murray Avenue, near Phillips. Excuse me, near Hobart. No, it wasn't by Minio's. It was further up the street. I think roughly. Oh, where the hot dog place is.
Okay.
I think that's where Katz's was.
Very nice. Excellent.
I did want to ask if anybody has heard about this, that Kennywood Park wants to take out the kangaroo ride, which is the only one left of its kind ever anywhere in the world. And there's been a petition going around to try to get Kennywood to not take that out.
Not only that, but the paratrooper as well.
Yeah, there are 4 rides that are supposed to be taken out. The curve that's over on the roadside, the kangaroo and the paratrooper. And there's another one that goes around and around. And I think it's near the
Enterprise.
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah. And I always love the paratrooper.
Classic. It'll end up at in Bloomsburg. What is that? All the old rides, they end up in Idlewild or what's the, Lauren, do you remember what's
Del Grosso? Is it Del Grosso?
Not to
Not Knoebels, is it?
Knoebels, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
all
it is.
the old rides end up at Knoebels.
Well, Kennywood's no longer owned by the family that owned it for years,
Yeah.
so I think that makes a difference.
Yes, I definitely will be including many Kennywood attractions in the book as well, because there are certainly lots of lost Kennywood places, and now even more now that we're talking about this, unfortunately.
Tomorrow, the History Center in the Strip District is going to have a talk on treasures in the archives, and Kennywood is one of the topics.
Yes, I thank you for reminding me that. I have been meaning to put that on my calendar, so I'm going to try and get out there for that. Well,
I went to it
there,
last year
get on
in
Zoom.
person. Yeah, it was really good in person, so I'm sure it'll be good in Zoom.
You could go, still sit in the racer car there behind History Center.
Yeah, go ahead, Toby.
Well, even more than the delicatessens, I miss the Jewish bakeries, particularly Rosenblum's, that had this corn rye that was absolutely out of this world, never duplicated.
Allegro actually has a wonderful Russian rye when they're open.
Not the same.
Not
the same. This was a little sourdough. Oh, it was great.
It was much
Do
heavier.
you ever wonder though if you went back, if it would be as good as you remember it?
Yes.
We deal with that in some of my writing classes. It's like,
We
you
weren't
can't go
kids in
home again.
Pittsburgh.
But I'll tell you, big gyms use their that corn rye for their sandwiches. Fantastic.
What do they use now?
I don't know. It's been a little while since I've been there. I used to take my graduate students down there occasionally, but that was some years ago.
People set up seats outside and eat.
Oz, I think I saw a hand raised there.
In my family, there was a trinity of bakery shops in Squirrel Hill. Rosenblum's was where you went for bread for the Friday night challah or for the corn rye, whatever it happened to be, even pumpernickel, you went to Rosenblum's. Yeah. And then there was Silberberg's.
Right.
Silberberg's was the classic for Jewish style pastries, the coffee cakes and things like that. And then Waldorf's was for the fancy desserts. Never in my life have I eaten a better donut than the donuts that they used to make at Waldorf's. They just
My brother was making those
melted
for
in
a
your
while.
mouth. What?
My brother was making those for a while.
Fabulous.
Did he save the recipe?
I don't think he could take it out with him.
Julia, I think I saw a hand wave there.
It's funny, I can't change my name to Julie. I just wondered, in what we've been talking about Pittsburgh disappearances, has anyone mentioned Walt Harper's attic or the Nixon Theater?
Someone actually, Kathy just mentioned that in the chat, but that's not something I have heard yet until this group. So tell me a little more.
The Nixon Theater is where I first saw hair when I was 10 years old. And my extremely cultured grandmother took me there, and everyone was just amazed that I got to see hair. And we sat in the second row. In the nude scene, I just pretended like it didn't bother me, but I was just amazed and felt so grown up because I didn't like scream or anything. But it was really cool.
I might have been 10 at the time too, but I still remember an outfit that three women wore that it looked like they were wearing three different dresses. And when they stood apart, it was like one big tube that they were all inside singing inside. Anyway. And Walt Harper's attic. Walt Harper was a great jazz musician. But if we're talking about Squirrel Hill, there was the Encore Theater. Wait, no, the Forum, right? Wasn't that up on Murray?
The Forum,
I was
yeah.
on Forbes.
Where Baskin and Robbins is now, the new one is. Right? No, that was the Guild.
That was, the Guild is where the bagel place is?
But the Guild is now Circle.
Friendship Circle.
Friendship Circle, and the Forum was up where Bagel Factory is.
Yeah.
Up on Forbes. In fact, you can still see the old facade of it on the back. It's gone from the front, but the back still has the concrete roundels embedded in the concrete. So, or stucco. I guess it's stucco.
FORVM. I can.
That's right.
That's right.
Going vertical.
Yeah, go ahead, Toby. Let me see if I can get you unmuted here.
Muted.
There you go.
The Lovelace marionettes with Margot Lovelace on Ellsworth. She had a whole collection of antique puppets, and she did puppet shows over the weekends. She was fabulous. And the theater was fabulous.
And she also had a little puppet called Toby.
Yeah. The dog to get everybody quiet was Toby. And my kids used to say, my father's name is Toby.
That was wonderful. What a great place to take the kids.
Oh, that sounds really neat.
Every Saturday we would go to the Playhouse.
The Playhouse was great too.
Can you see my puppy?
Oh,
I
how
see your
cute.
puppy.
Rolex, he's my watchdog.
Quiet
Tell you how
as
it's supposed to be
quiet
if
as snowflakes and flat as pancakes. That's what Toby used to say. Be quiet as snowflakes and flat as pancakes.
Well, I have gotten a bunch of other notes in the chat here. Rose and Bloom's the whipped cream cakes. That sounds amazing, Jerry mentioned. And then Kathy also mentions the Stanley Theater downtown, which is a large movie theater. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the sign is still downtown on the corner there. And Rhoda's, and then we've got Sirloin, Nancy.
Yeah.
Nancy said she's without a mic and camera, so I'm just gonna take that from
And
the
pole eyes
chat here.
too with their soft shell crab.
Yes.
Oh, how can we forget pole eyes?
Just
And
assume
Weinstein's.
do that.
And Sedini's as long as we're at it.
Bedini's, right?
You
Bedini.
don't need to be in there. It looks so funny. I'm at a
Bubbles and Sherman.
Is Lieberman's Bakery any good?
Oh,
Oh,
loved
yeah.
it. We loved it.
Good.
They had a wonderful, they had cheese squares and they had elephant ears.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
kettle.
And their breads were good too, particularly their challah.
Good. I happen to have the same last name, if anybody noticed. I had lots of it.
Well, I know we're getting, I think, close to time. I don't want to keep you all too late into the evening, but before we wrap up, are there any last lost treasures you'd like to share? And I will, again, drop my email address in the chat. I would love to hear from all of you if other ideas pop into your head, or if you happen to be looking through photos. I'd love to share your memories.
Mark Sedley.
What are you trying to do?
I want to say something.
Celebrations, a restaurant that was very.
Did you say, I'm sorry, did you say Celebrations?
The Park Shenley and Klein's Seafood restaurants that
Okay.
were really
Klein's, yes.
Klein's Seafood. You know, so someone else just mentioned that one to me the other day. And then I think there's someone, L. Lighty was about to say something.
Unmute.
Yes, nobody's mentioned the first bagel place around here, a Bagel Land down over the hill at the bottom of the
Sure.
Right.
before all these other imposters.
It's the only place you could get bagels.
You could watch them make it also. It was wonderful.
Right.
They didn't have air conditioning.
I feel bad for their employees.
Oh yeah, it was horrible. You had to time it when you went.
I remember growing up that the Manor Theater used to have 2 different movies a week. One was like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and the other one was Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, something like that. And the thing to do for kids in Squirrel Hill was to go to the Manor Friday night to the movies, and you looked around to see who was at the movies Friday night, because whoever was there probably didn't have a date for Saturday night.
Yeah.
That's good planning right there.
And we used to go to Weinstein's afterwards to have something to eat after the movies. And if you had money in your pocket, you could get a corned beef sandwich for 65 cents. But I used to get something called the Baltimore Special, which was a kosher hot dog with a big thick slice of kosher bologna wrapped around it. Heart attack on a plate. And it was only 35 cents. 35 cents. So it was a bargain compared to the corned beef.
Well, I learned later that Weinstein's became somewhat famous for its upstairs, where they had illegal high-stakes poker games.
Yeah.
And I remember they were raided once.
How about that Chinese restaurant?
Wow. There were several of them.
When we first moved here, there was a small Chinese restaurant on Murray, right near Phillips. Their biggest sign said "Beer on Tap," and
cold beers.
we had just moved in, and we ordered out from there, and the food wasn't bad. But later on, all the Pittsburghers were surprised they even had food. It was known as a gambling joint. But we were new to the city.
Right. How are you to know?
Food wasn't bad.
So, Rosalind, before we end the meeting, I just thought usually we have our speakers have the opportunity to sell their books at the meetings, because we all, people who've written books want to do that. So what could you tell us? You have mentioned
certainly.
your book, and
Yes.
it can be gotten.
It is available, and I'll put this in the chat, the website. The website is 100thingspittsburgh.com. That's the number 100. Those come from me personally, so I will personalize them for you if you wish. If you're giving them as gifts, just let me know if you want them made out to a certain person. I'd be happy to do that. But thank you, Helen, for bringing that up. In terms of the Lost Treasures of Pittsburgh book, I am working on it now. I'm in sort of phase 1 of research. I'll be turning it in this summer, and then it should be ready to publish for the holiday season next year. So I will certainly get in touch again once I've had more research done and once we are closer to publication. But for right now, 100 Things Pittsburgh is available, 100thingspittsburgh.com. And before we go, I'll just say thank you again to everyone. It was so fun to get together with fellow Pittsburghers and laugh and just reminisce and think about some good memories. And you've all given me a lot of good work to do. I've learned about a lot of places tonight that I haven't heard about yet. So I really appreciate your expertise.
Rosalind, thank you. This was a hoot.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone. Take good care, and hopefully we'll get to meet in person sometime soon.
Next book.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely.
Good night.
Thank you very much, Rosalind.
Thank you.
Good night now. Thank you.
And very interesting stuff. And I think you'll be hearing from a number of us out here who have long memories of Squirrel Hill, and for that matter, Pittsburgh.
That would be wonderful. I'd love that.
And your website's listed here.
Yes.
Does it have information what you're looking for, or any specifics, or?
Good question. I mean, I'll take any memories, really. Photos, if you have them, you certainly can, take photographs of them and send them to me. You can scan them if you wish, or I can handle all of that. You can mail them to me. Just send me an email and we can make arrangements for that. But I'm taking any and all Pittsburgh memories. Can be restaurants, theaters, arcades, businesses, any lost treasures that you remember. Of course, I've got the big ones, as you all know, but also off the beaten path type places that are places that you remember fondly. Any of those are
we've got videos on our website, linked on our website, that tell what people have presented to us.
Oh,
and
good. Okay.
There are a zillion ideas among them.
Okay. That I will check that out. That's a good place to research.
And this one will be on the website.
Okay, that's great.
Thanks to Audrey.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. Well, yes. So it's 100thingspittsburgh.com and then losttreasurespgh@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out and we can keep the conversation going. But until then, thanks everybody again.
Okay.
This is really fun.
Thank you.
Thank you very Good
much.
night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Room was just filled with these big lines of computers, and they could do what a phone can do right now. It's amazing.
I remember when I was about 6, Westinghouse had open house and we saw Univac.
Oh, wow.
And you're right, it was that huge, the room.
Yeah.
But that was what made these possible. So, well, listen, I have to go.
Okay.
We're going to go take baby out. We'll wave to you, Wayne.
I did mine earlier. I might go out briefly again because I hate getting up in the middle of the night.
Hey, we do that, don't we?
Yeah, do what you have to do.
All right, you guys. I'll see y'all.
See you next time.
Okay. See you, Wayne.
Okay, Jim. We'll see you.
All right. Bye.